In this video, we will have a look at René Descartes' take on the existence of an external world and his proof of God by discussing his famous meditations on first philosophy. You heard the last part right, a proof of the existence of God. Let me explain. When it comes to Descartes, it's sometimes said as if he only had one idea. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And this is, don't get me wrong, not mistaken. However, it's somehow short-sighted because the cogito ergo sum is just one piece of the puzzle. It's a means to an end in Descartes' philosophy. It serves the higher purpose to prove the existence of God, as well as to prove the existence of an external world and to establish a mind-body distinction. Actually, already the full title of his famous meditations from the second edition from 1642 gives it away because it reads as Meditations on First Philosophy, in which the existence of God and the distinction between the human soul and the body will be proven. With this out of the way, let's dive right into the video and see how Descartes pursues this proof of God and, of course, which role the cogito ergo sum, the I think therefore I am, plays in the process. So there are more or less 4 steps in the meditations, the first one being doubt. Essentially, Descartes' philosophical project is about the foundation for science and true knowledge. He wonders from which point and with what method should science operate. To find that, Descartes searches for an unshakable ground for us and for science to start from. And to get there, he claims we first need to doubt everything. Not because he wants to arrive at nothing, but to arrive at something that cannot be doubted anymore. That is with all certainty true and thus can build the fundament and solid ground for a true scientific inquiry. So there are 2 layers to Descartes' doubt. First, sense perception, and this is perhaps the most intuitive one. Because we all know those situations in which we saw, felt or heard something that actually wasn't the way we saw, felt or heard it, so our senses tricked us. And because we know that our senses tricked us once or many times, Descartes claims that we cannot rely on them at all. Along these lines of faulty sense perception, he also construes the thought experiment that we could all be asleep. Because even in our dreams, we think that we experience or feel something, right? So who tells us that our whole life is not a dream too, and that we are actually asleep? So these were the first doubts concerning sense perception. Now B, on the most dramatic level and perhaps the most famous level, Descartes says that there could also be an evil almighty spirit or demon that tricks us even in what we think, for example in mathematics or logic. So that evil almighty spirit could, say, implant wrong facts of logic or mathematics into our cognition. Thus, we may think that 3 + 2 = 5, which is an example of Descartes, but this is actually wrong because it is based on the malicious logic or the malicious mathematical framework that the evil almighty spirit gave us. So you see how radical Descartes literally doubts everything, and especially this last level of the evil almighty spirit is a popular reference point for those matrix theories that we could all be a brain in a bath and that our whole life is just a simulation which our brain in the bathtub or in the bath gets. Now to the second step in the meditations, the I think and the I exist. Despite those doubts, Descartes famously argues that there is one unshakable truth that we are aware of and that is with all certainty true even in this horrible scenario of the evil almighty spirit. And this knowledge is that I have to exist. Because in order to be tricked, even by this almighty spirit, I have to exist in some way or another. This means that we do not know how we exist, but we know that we exist. This is the first step. Now, secondly, Descartes wonders, why do I know that I exist? And that is because I'm doubting and I'm thinking. So our act of thinking and doubting proves our existence. Or, as it's known famously, I think, therefore I am. The well-known cogito ergo sum. So we have that unshakable truth and foundation for science, I think and I exist. However, is that satisfying? Not really, to be honest, because we do not know anything else. We do not know how we are and we do not know what the world outside of us looks like. So we could still be a program, we could still be a brain in a bath that knows that it exists, but it doesn't know that it exists as a brain in a bath. And that is why Descartes searches for more than just the I think and I exist, and this builds a lengthy part of the rest of the meditations. Which brings us along to point 3, ideas. So what do we know else? Descartes says eventually that we have many more, say, activities of our eyes, such as representations or our will, which he sums up as ideas. For example, let's say I have the idea of a blue ball. Now, there might be no such thing as a blue ball in the real world, but I really have this idea of a blue ball. I just have it. It doesn't matter if it's true or if there is some reference, but I have this idea. I know that I have this idea. So I know that I have ideas, but do I know that those ideas correspond to a real thing in the world, such as a blue ball? That's the real question. 4. And finally, this brings Descartes along to the proof of God. Descartes pulls this off with the operation of cause and effect, for which he uses about 4 steps. A. Everything there is an effect of a cause, right? Nothing can evolve out of nothing. So something is always caused by something. This also applies to my ideas according to Descartes. Like when I have this idea of the blue ball, there must be some cause that caused the effect of me having the idea of a blue ball. B. Descartes claims that every cause has the same reality as the effect it causes. Or short, cause and effect have the same reality. A cause cannot have a higher or lower reality than its effect, which also goes the other way around. If you have an effect with a higher reality, its cause also needs to have the same higher reality. Now, what does that mean? How is my idea of a blue ball as a reality on the same level as the cause for that idea of the blue ball? See, that's why Descartes introduces the distinction between formal reality and objective reality. So take our example of the blue ball. My idea of the blue ball as an effect has an objective reality, and the cause that caused this idea of the blue ball has a formal reality. So the realities of cause and effect are not the same realities in the same respect, and thus it looks like this, that the formal reality of a cause is equivalent to the objective reality of the effect, and so higher formal reality equals higher objective reality, or put the other way around, if you have a higher objective reality, its cause needs to have the same higher formal reality. D. Now, Descartes claims that we also have an idea of God, an almighty infinite entity. Now, you might be an atheist, but you can still form this idea of God. You don't have to believe in it, but you can think of an infinite almighty entity, at least for Descartes. And now he wonders why. Why can you think of an infinite almighty entity? Why can you think of God? Is it me? Or is it you? Is our imagination running wild? That's impossible for Descartes, because then we would have to be the cause. But our formal reality is not equal to the objective reality of the idea of an infinite almighty entity. Our formal reality and we are not infinite and almighty. Thus, Descartes argues something else gave me that idea of God. And who did it? You might have guessed it, God himself, according to Descartes, because only God has the high formal reality as a cause that equals the high objective reality of the idea of God. So actually God is the cause for the idea of God that I have as an effect. Or you can put it like this: I could not possibly make up the idea of God if there is no God, because again, I am too limited in my formal reality to be the cause for the objective reality of an infinite, perfect and almighty entity such as God as an effect. But now, how does that save me from living in a simulation? How do I know that I'm not a brain in a bath? To make it quick here, Descartes claims that God grants us this knowledge. He is an active part in the process in which we constitute our ideas about the world or about us, so he influences our ideas. And because God is good, God would not trick us in that process. And now, as a last question, why is God good for Descartes? And that's quickly said for him, because God is perfect. Being evil is a lack of something according to Descartes. But God is perfect, so he doesn't lack anything, so God cannot be evil. Now, I'm sure that this was a lot, but I hope you still enjoyed the video and that it became clear that Descartes is way more than just the cogito ergo sum. Let me know what you think about this, because there is a lot to discuss in Descartes, so I'm very curious about your comments. And if you're interested in Descartes' famous mind-body distinction, I might make another video for it, so please like and subscribe so you stay up to date. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.